you, Mr. Versamis. I would like to extend my thanks to Professor Siriopoulou Deli and her colleagues for setting up such a nice conference with a very interesting topic, interesting topic. And let me start by saying that this presentation is refers to a behavior analytic model, a systemic behavior analytic model, and how this model can be applied to improve the quality of life of families with children with autism spectrum disorder. Let me suggest that this presentation offers two means for improving quality of life. One has to do with merging epistemological paradigms to create a paradigm that addresses as well as possible the needs of people with autism spectrum disorder. And in addition, to suggest that parent training is a very important means for improving the quality of life of people with ASD and their families. The science of behavior analysis has evolved to the point of addressing how the field of applied behavior analysis can define quality of life in the context of optimal therapeutic outcomes. Several researchers have tried to address how we define socially quality of life. Specifically, Schwartz and Kelly suggest that there are various ways that we have to take into consideration in order to improve quality of life of people with disabilities. Making socially important changes, decreasing challenging behavior, improving the ability of people with disabilities to make choices, making friends, participating in a meaningful manner in school and other social settings, and studying the behavior in its natural context are some of the ways in which we can improve the quality, as Schwartz and Kelly suggest. In addition, quality of life is supposed to model for people with developmental disability, quality of life models for people with developmental disabilities help us translate abstract concepts such as self-determination and inclusion into evidence-based practices. So the question remains, how can we define services that lead to quality of life for people with autism spectrum disorder? There is ample evidence to suggest that optimal outcomes, in other words, most appropriate and effective treatment, can be provided when we use the behavior analytic epistemological paradigm. There are several meta-analytic studies that show that the ABA is most effective and is more effective than TEACH or the Denver model or other types of interventions. Virus Ortega has demonstrated that comprehensive ABA interventions are most effective in achieving medium to large effects in terms of intellectual functioning, language development, and other important functions of children with ASD. The latest meta-analytic studies we have was conducted by myself and by my research team. And indeed, in this particular study, we demonstrated that ABA interventions are very effective in improving intellectual abilities, and also moderately effective in improving language communication and social skills in people with autism spectrum disorder. So one of our attempts in the past has been to define most effective treatments and how these most effective treatments can lead to optimal outcomes. Traditionally, we choose child-related variables to define most effective treatments, whereas this particular presentation aims to demonstrate that we have to combine micro and macroscopic analysis in order to understand what's optimal outcome in terms of various agents rather than the sole agent, the child. Fine and her colleagues define optimal outcomes when children with autism spectrum disorder reach normal levels of IQ scores, attends regular education, and does not demonstrate but minimal autistic characteristics. Also, Deborah Fine has claims in this particular article that there are children with autism that surpass their diagnosis, but we cannot identify the exact variables that lead to optimal outcomes. And I suggest that maybe the reason why we cannot identify the exact variables is because we're focusing only on child-related variables and ignore variables associated with the family, school, and other important macroscopic variables associated with the child with ASD. So we can define comprehensive treatments in terms of skills related to the child's behavior alone, or we can define comprehensive treatment in terms of referring to as many systems associated with the child as possible. So to say that in a more detailed way, comprehensive treatment can refer to child-related areas alone. So whether or not we provide highly structured therapeutic interventions, naturalistic interventions, whether we provide social skills training programs and support the child in inclusive settings. So this is a comprehensive intervention, but we continue to refer to the child alone, the child as a sole agent. My suggestion is that we define comprehensive treatment in terms of various agents, child-related variables, of course, but also parent-related variables, such as whether the parents require training or family counseling, community-related variables, if there are campaigns and organizations that aim to improve the rights of children with autism, and finally, school-related variables that have to do with teachers, teacher training, peer awareness when the children are included in schools, and so on. So we don't have all the answers pertaining to optimal treatments yet, but we know that there is lack of information, especially in the areas of support, guidance, and counseling pertaining to the family. There is a great need for therapeutic models that adapt the systemic understanding of the needs of children with autism and their families. So we need to treat autism in the framework of a systems approach that is take care of the needs of the child, but also the family, the therapeutic team, and all the systems that surround the child. We suggest that comprehensive treatment should combine different epistemological paradigms, and specifically we suggest that general systems theory and system family therapy may be viewed as a complementary epistemological paradigm to the science of behavior analysis. So combining behavior analysis with general systems theory, we suggest, provides the means, the theoretical means to provide comprehensive treatment outcomes for all children with autism spectrum disorder. The two paradigms, as I said before, are complementary in the sense that behavior analytic paradigms offer more of a micro-level analysis, helping us comprehend the complexity of human behavior and how we can apply rigorous therapeutic interventions to each child depending on their needs. General systems theory, on the other hand, complements this paradigm by offering a macro-level analysis which places emphasis on systemic complexity and emergence, and we're going to see what this means when we discuss these particular epistemological paradigms. The merits of behavioral analytic interventions for autism spectrum disorder are very well known already. It's an evidence-based practice. It offers us a basic premise of behavioral analytics that we accept that all students are capable of learning, and it's up to the therapists, it's up to their educators to provide effective and appropriate and efficient interventions. We understand that there are a lot of characteristics of behavioral analytic interventions that are very helpful to autism, such as paying attention to small units of behavior, applying therapeutic technology in a consistent manner, taking into consideration both antecedent environmental properties and consequences, promoting generalization and maintenance, and so on. So there is ample research to demonstrate that applied behavior analysis can offer most appropriate and most effective interventions for all children with autism spectrum disorders. General systems theory, on the other hand, has not so far been assessed as to the importance that it may play in helping us develop treatment interventions that help us attain most effective and most appropriate services for people with autism spectrum disorder. General systems theory aims to demonstrate that there are common laws and correspondences to all systems. And that's very important because it helps us understand that the systems are in constant motion, ever-changing in dynamic interchanges with the environment. They're not static, and that the whole is different than the sum of its parts. Anthropos, as Vasiliev stated, is conceptualized as a biopsychological system within the boundaries of which biological, psychosocial, and socioeconomic processes transact. So this model is a transactional model taking into consideration micro systems that interact with Anthropos, with the child with autism in our case. So according to the general systems theory, one cannot study only parts and processes in isolation. We must view them as system, as an entity, by studying its organization, its orders, which results, as we said before, from dynamic transactions, from dynamic interactions of the parts of the system. So as far as a multifactorial analysis in the case of children with ASD, it's important that we assess as many systems and subsystems and hypersystems and how those systems relate and interact to the child with autism. And it's also important to find out how emergent properties may occur from these complex interactions. Emergence and its properties help us understand that it's not impossible to exert full control under any environmental conditions. So every intervention has its limitations, and complexity helps us identify as many variables as possible that relate to most effective treatments, but this is an ongoing process. We can never say that we know all the properties that may affect the improvement of child behavior. Focusing on the Greek family, George Vassiliou said, it's important to focus on as many contexts as possible of the person, of the family that enters therapy in order to have a better understanding of their needs. So both paradigms, behavior analysis and the general systems theory paradigm, underline the importance of taking into consideration both the context within the child is interacting and also placing emphasis on concurrent contingencies or what is happening in the here and now with the child, and also in the history of the child. What has the child learned up until now? In this sense, to reach optimal outcomes, we need to look at cultural variables, variables related to family, and variables related to the child's school environment. Thus, it's important to take into consideration that a great number of things have changed. Several cultural lineages have changed since in the 1970s. children with autism started coming out of the psychiatric units to enter the community, to be included in schools. And nowadays, we have plenty of studies that demonstrate that people with autism spectrum disorder can enter universities and can be very well supported in university settings, and there are no limits to where their development and their achievements can reach. The family, on the other hand, is viewed as a social system and the most influential one for child development, especially for the first years of a person's life. Thus, we suggest that parent training is a crucial variable that we need to take into consideration in order for us to impose ultimate outcomes in children who receive treatment. And within the behavioral analytic framework, it was recognized since the beginnings of applied behavior analysis that parent training is very important. So we suggest that parent training is very crucial because it helps the child learn to refrain from maladaptive behavior and also generalize and maintain therapeutic improvements in a generalized manner. So there are great advantages of parental involvement, as we said, because parents provide ample opportunities for the child to learn. Parents can acquire therapeutic and teaching skills. They may help the child evolve outside of the therapeutic context. And as parents are empowered to help their child, they become more empowered in general in terms of seeking for their child's rights and imposing as much improvement on their child as possible. It's also important to train parents from a socioeconomic perspective because the current state of economic affairs calls for very careful and efficient use of our limited financial resources. So even from a socioeconomic perspective, it's imperative to train parents since there is a dramatic increase in the prevalence or diagnosis of autism, high cost of treatment, and there is a necessity dictated by serious financial constraints that mandate for pragmatic approaches to a therapeutic plan. The truth of the matter is that there's going to be a decrease resources for therapeutic programs for children with autism. So combining two epistemological paradigms, the experimental analysis of behavior and general systems theory into what we call systemic behavior analysis offers a very good context for parents to be involved in the therapeutic program of their child. It's also very important to see this prospect in a bidirectional causality framework. A change is understood in terms of bidirectional causality. Not only the parent affects child behavior, but the child also causes parental change. So the interplay, the relations of the child and the parent is what produces change, and this is what we need to attend to. So we have conducted a series of studies that had to do with child responding, parent responding, and parent-child interaction. We demonstrated that by attending to all those variables, child-related, parent-related, and parent-child interaction, and by also defining these behaviors in a very careful manner, we can identify targets that improve the quality of life of the families of people with autism spectrum disorder. Some of our studies have already been published, and the pilot studies, the summary of those findings, can help us understand that a systemic parent training approach resulted in great improvements in both child behavior, parent behavior, and in parent-child interaction. So in terms of children with autism spectrum disorder, we know that they learn to apply behavior and analytic procedures in a naturalistic manner within their home settings, and that response generalization to untrained responses was also attained. So children generalized the therapeutic outcomes when parents were trained in their homes, and their behavior improved even to untrained responses. So that was very important, and it was also socially validated because parents and teachers reported that intervention was very important for the participants' social adjustment at the home and in the school. Parents were very satisfied with the program, and a lot of suggestions come out of those studies for the improvement of our practices. Both mothers and fathers can learn to help their child improve language, play, and social skills. Children with autism spectrum disorder receive intensive behavior analytic training, but also those who didn't receive training, behavior analytic training, benefited from these particular interventions. Parents become proficient in helping their child generalize and maintain treatment outcomes across time. And the quality of the child and his family improved overall when parent training practices were implemented into the treatment protocol for the child. So the long-lasting global recession led to austerity of measures that hurt minorities and deprived citizens the most, since governmental and federal social spending is reduced. And parent training can provide the means of accommodating to some extent for such reduced allocation of services. It's important for us to counteract these cutoffs with improving the way we systematize parent training practices as a means of improving child outcomes. And that way we can reach lasting, most effective and efficient treatment outcomes and identify new venues for the design of therapeutic interventions. So in the words of Marshall Lineham, the person who introduced us to dialectical behavior therapy, we can say that quality of life translates into building a life worth living for people with autism spectrum disorders and their families. Thank you for your attention.